The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council fell silent as Admiral Elaine Frost stepped through the massive doorway. The tall human woman walked with quiet confidence, her simple navy blue uniform standing in stark contrast to the ornate clothing worn by the hundreds of alien representatives surrounding her. The council chamber, a vast amphitheater carved into the core of a hollow asteroid, housed delegates from over 6,000 worlds. Floating screens showed the same, horrifying images on repeat, the burning remnants of the mighty Viridian Empire's capital worlds reduced to cooling cinders. Human, the voice of High Counselor Vexter boomed across the chamber, its 8 eyes narrowing as its mandibles clicked in barely restrained fury. You stand accused of genocide, the destruction of 17 settled worlds, the deaths of 108 billion sentient beings, the complete destruction of a civilization that has stood for 12,000 cycles, all in a single night, all by a single human warship. Whispers rustled through the chamber. Several delegates rose in outrage, demanding immediate execution. Admiral Frost's face remained calm as she looked up at the enormous alien. With respect, High Counselor, I was called here to explain. Will you allow me that courtesy before judgment? Explain? A blue-skinned delegate screeched, its skin glowing with anger. What possible explanation could justify such barbarity? You humans were barely reaching your moons when the Viridians were already mapping the galactic core. Frost turned her gaze to the angry delegate. The explanation is simple. The Viridian Empire wasn't destroyed by a single human warship. Her voice carried through the suddenly silent chamber. It was destroyed by a single human. The council erupted in disbelief. Impossible, shouted one delegate. Lies, cried another. High Counselor Vextar raised its clawed hands for silence. Proceed with your explanation, human, but know that your words will be checked against all evidence. Admiral Frost nodded once. The human responsible is being brought here now. Her name is Lieutenant Commander Thea Rivers. She didn't mean to destroy an empire, but perhaps it's best if I start with how this all began. 3 standard months ago, when a damaged Viridian scout ship appeared in Earth orbit with a desperate warning. 3 months earlier, the UES Nemesis drifted silently at the edge of Earth's orbit. Lieutenant Commander Thea Rivers stared out the viewport at the damaged Viridian scout ship that had appeared without warning just hours before. What's the status of the alien pilot? Captain James Lowell asked, his weathered face grim in the blue light of the bridge displays. Critical but stable, sir, Communications Officer Patel replied. Medical says he's conscious and asking to speak with our leadership. Rivers turned from the viewport. At 34, she was the youngest weapons specialist ever assigned to Earth's experimental deep space fleet. Captain, the scout ship's weapon systems were active before it arrived. The damage patterns suggest it was fleeing from something. Lowell nodded. That matches what little the pilot has told us. Apparently, we've stumbled into the middle of a Viridian civil war. 6 hours later, Rivers stood in Earth Central Command's Situation Room as Admiral Frost played the recording from the Viridian pilot. The Harmony project must be stopped, the alien gasped, green fluid seeping from wounds along its scaled torso. The military directorate has seized control of the prototype. Emperor Zontil has lost command of his forces. They plan to use it on all species, starting with those closest to Viridian space. Your world is among the first targets. The recording ended and the room remained silent until General Morris spoke. We've confirmed the Viridian Empire is the dominant power in this sector of the galaxy. Their technology exceeds ours by centuries. If they've decided Earth is a target, we need more information. That's why we're sending a diplomatic team to meet with this Emperor Zontil, Admiral Frost said, and the Nemesis will escort them. If this military directorate has truly gone rogue, we need to establish contact with whatever legitimate authority remains. Rivers spoke up. Admiral, the Nemesis is still running trials on the new defensive systems. We're not fully operational. You're the best we have, Commander, Frost replied, and you're the foremost expert on the prototype shields. The diplomatic team leaves in 24 hours. Be ready. 3 days later, the Nemesis entered the edge of Viridian space, carrying Earth's first official diplomatic mission to an alien empire. Ambassador Diane Lee led the small team, prepared to negotiate Earth's position in the growing crisis. During the journey, Rivers spent most of her time fine-tuning the ship's experimental defense systems. While running diagnostics, she noticed something unusual, a pattern in the neural interface that didn't match any of her programming. She decided to investigate it privately before reporting to the captain. Commander, we're picking up a transmission. Officer Patel announced as Rivers returned to the bridge. It's being broadcast across multiple frequencies. The main screen flickered to life, showing a tall, elegantly dressed Viridian. Unlike the scout pilot, this one had elaborate gold markings across its scales. I am Emperor Zontil of the Sovereign Viridian Domains, the alien announced. To the approaching Earth vessel, we welcome your diplomatic initiative. However, I must warn you that rogue elements of my military have blockaded the approach to our capital world. Proceed to these coordinates instead for a secure meeting. Captain Lowell looked to Ambassador Lee, who nodded. Accept the invitation, Captain. This may be our only chance to establish peaceful contact. Rivers studied the coordinates. Sir, that position puts us deep in Viridian territory, away from any clear exit route. Noted, Commander, Lowell replied. But we're here on a diplomatic mission. Ambassador Lee has final say on our destination. The Nemesis altered course toward the meeting point. As they traveled deeper into Viridian space, Rivers continued investigating the anomaly in the ship's systems. What she found disturbed her. Evidence that something or someone had been making subtle changes to the neural interface. Changes that would allow much deeper integration between the ship's AI and a human operator. Before she could bring her findings to the captain, alarms blared across the ship. Multiple vessels approaching, Lieutenant Drake shouted from tactical. Viridian warships bearing down on our position from 3 vectors. Hail them, Lowell ordered. The screen flickered to show a different Viridian, this one wearing military insignia, its scales darker and eyes cold. Earth vessel. This is Commander Tevron of the Viridian Military Directorate. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded. Your diplomatic team is now under our protection. What's the meaning of this? Ambassador Lee demanded, stepping forward. We were invited by Emperor Zontil. The Viridian's mouth formed what might have been a smile. The Emperor's invitation was premature. Your species has been selected for a great honor. Your diplomats will be the first to experience the perfection of harmony. The transmission cut off as the Viridian ships moved into attack position. Red alert, Lowell shouted. Rivers, get those shields online. We need to get our people out of here. As the first energy blasts struck the Nemesis, Rivers made a decision. If they were going to survive and rescue the diplomatic team, she would need to use the modified neural interface, even if she didn't know what it might do to her. The Nemesis shuddered as another blast from the Viridian warship struck its shields. On the bridge, Captain Lowell gripped his command chair while Lieutenant Commander Thea Rivers worked frantically at the weapons console. Shields at 63%, Rivers called out. The experimental matrix is holding, but we can't take sustained fire like this. We need to retreat and regroup, Ambassador Lee insisted. We can't help our diplomatic team if we're destroyed. Lowell nodded grimly. Helm, prepare to execute emergency jump protocol. Rivers, I need a distraction to cover our escape. On it, sir. Rivers' fingers flew across her console, activating a sequence she'd been developing, launching chaff pods with modified energy signatures. They should read as multiple ships on their sensors. The Nemesis lurched as the engines engaged, pulling them away from the Viridian blockade. The distraction worked just long enough for them to reach the edge of the system and make a short jump to safety. When they emerged from jump space, Lowell called an emergency meeting in the ship's conference room. Our diplomatic team has been captured, he stated bluntly, and based on the transmission, they're in immediate danger from something called harmony. We need options. Rivers cleared her throat. Sir, during our escape, I was able to trace the diplomatic shuttle's emergency beacon. They're being held at a research facility, orbiting the 3rd moon of the Viridian homeworld. A direct assault would be suicide, Security Chief Marcus pointed out. I'm not suggesting an assault, Rivers replied. I'm suggesting an infiltration. A small team could use one of our stealth shuttles to approach the facility undetected. Lowell considered this. Who would lead this team? Rivers met his gaze steadily. I would, sir. I've been analyzing the Viridian security protocols since we entered their space. I believe I can get us in and out. 6 hours later, Rivers led a 4-person team toward the Viridian research facility. Beside her sat Lieutenant Drake, Security Officer Jansen, and Medical Officer Torres. Their shuttle, with its experimental stealth technology, approached the massive orbital structure undetected. Remember, Rivers instructed as they prepared to dock with an emergency airlock. Our only objective is to locate and extract our people. We avoid engagement unless absolutely necessary. The team infiltrated the facility with surprising ease, using hacked security codes Rivers had extracted from their earlier encounter. They moved through the dimly lit corridors, avoiding Viridian patrols. "I'm picking up human life signs 2 levels down," Torres whispered, checking her scanner. 5 signatures, all showing elevated stress markers. As they descended deeper into the facility, Rivers noticed something strange about the Viridians they passed. Many moved with an unnatural synchronicity, their eyes glazed as if in a trance. They finally reached a laboratory area where, through a large observation window, they saw the Earth diplomatic team strapped to examination tables. Viridian scientists moved around them, adjusting equipment connected to strange helmets placed on the humans' heads. "What are they doing to them?" Jansen whispered. Rivers studied the equipment. "Some kind of neural interface. Different from anything I've seen, but the principles appear similar to our experimental systems." She accessed a nearby terminal, quickly downloading data while the others prepared for the rescue. "I've got the door controls," she said after a moment. "On my mark, Torres and I will secure our people. Drake and Jansen watch our backs." The rescue initially went as planned. They surprised the Viridian scientists and secured the diplomatic team, who were groggy but conscious. Ambassador Lee gripped Rivers' arm as she was freed from her restraints. "They were in our minds," Lee gasped, testing something. They called it the first phase of harmony. As they prepared to retreat, alarms blared throughout the facility. In the corridor outside, they heard the heavy footsteps of approaching guards. "New plan," Rivers decided quickly. "Drake, get everyone back to the shuttle. I'll create a diversion and meet you there." "That's too risky," Torres objected. "It's our only chance," Rivers countered, handing the data drive to Drake. "This information needs to get back to Earth, now go." While the team escaped with the diplomats, Rivers headed in the opposite direction, planting small explosives she'd brought along as she went. She had nearly reached her rendezvous point when a stun blast caught her from behind. Rivers awoke strapped to the same examination table where the diplomats had been held. Around her, Viridian scientists conversed in hushed tones. "The neural mapping shows anomalous patterns," one said, studying a display of Rivers' brain activity. "This human is different from the others." A taller Viridian stepped forward, its scale patterns marking it as a high-ranking official. "This presents an opportunity. Proceed with the harmony integration. Full immersion." Before Rivers could struggle, a helmet-like device descended over her head. Pain lanced through her skull as something probed into her mind, attempting to restructure her thoughts. She fought against it, focusing on her training, on her identity. Strangely, instead of being overwhelmed, Rivers felt something unexpected happening. The connection seemed to flow both ways. As the Viridian technology reached into her mind, she found herself reaching back, perceiving the network that linked the device to the facility's systems. The Viridians noticed it too. Alarms began to sound as displays around the room flashed warning signals. "Impossible," one scientist exclaimed. "She's accessing the network." "Shut it down." But before they could react, Rivers had already gathered enough information to understand what was happening. The Harmony Project wasn't just a weapon, it was a means of forcing other species into a collective consciousness controlled by the Viridian leadership. Using the momentary confusion, Rivers focused her mind on the restraints holding her. Somehow, through the connection established by the Harmony device, she managed to trigger their release mechanism. She tore the helmet from her head and ran, fighting through the disorientation. By the time she reached the shuttle bay, the rest of her team had returned looking for her. They escaped the facility under heavy fire, Rivers piloting with an uncanny precision that surprised even herself. Back aboard the Nemesis, Medical Officer Torres examined Rivers thoroughly. "I can't explain it," Torres said, showing Captain Lowell the brain scans. "The Viridian device has altered neural pathways, creating new connections. But instead of controlling her, it seems to have enhanced her abilities, particularly in relation to technology interfaces." Rivers sat up slowly. "I can feel the ship, Captain. Not just through the controls, but directly. It's like the Nemesis has become an extension of myself." "What did you learn about their plans?" Lowell asked. Rivers' expression darkened. "The Harmony Project is nearly complete. In less than 48 hours, they plan to activate a galaxy-wide network of transmission stations. Every sentient species within reach will be forcibly connected to their collective. We need to warn Earth," Ambassador Lee insisted. "Already tried," Communications Officer Patel reported. Entering the medical bay. All channels are being jammed. The Viridians have isolated us. Rivers stood, steadying herself against a nearby console. As her fingers touched the surface, the displays reacted, cycling through information faster than anyone could manually input commands. "Captain," she said quietly, "I think I know how we can stop them. But you're not going to like it." Before she could explain, the ship's sensors detected a massive energy signature approaching. The main screen activated automatically, revealing a fleet of Viridian warships surrounding them, led by an enormous command vessel. The face of a regal Viridian appeared on screen. "Earth vessel, this is Emperor Zontil. Your crew member has experienced the first gift of harmony. Soon all humans will share in this blessing." His eyes fixed on Rivers. "You feel it already, don't you? The connection. The potential. This is just the beginning." Rivers stared back at the Viridian leader, suddenly understanding. "You're not trying to enslave us. You're trying to ascend us, against our will." The Emperor's mouth formed that same cold smile. "Evolution requires guidance, Lieutenant Commander Rivers. Your species has potential we haven't seen in millennia, particularly you." As the Emperor spoke, Rivers felt something stirring in her mind, a presence reaching out through the residual connection of the Harmony device. Without warning, she collapsed to the deck, her eyes rolling back as ship systems around her began to activate on their own. Rivers gasped awake in the medical bay, her heart racing. Captain Lowell and Dr. Torres stood over her, concern etched on their faces. "What happened?" Rivers asked, her voice hoarse. "You've been unconscious for 6 hours," Torres replied, checking the monitors. "Your neural activity was off the charts. How do you feel?" Rivers sat up slowly, noticing something different. The ship's systems seemed to pulse in her awareness like a heartbeat she could feel without touching. "I can sense the nemesis," she whispered. "All of it. Every system, every circuit." Lowell exchanged worried glances with Torres. "The Viridian fleet is still surrounding us, but they've made no aggressive moves. They're waiting for something." Rivers swung her legs off the bed, steadying herself. "They're waiting for me." The Harmony device did something unexpected. Instead of controlling me, it created a direct neural link between my mind and technology. The Emperor knows this. "Can they track you through this connection?" Lowell asked. Rivers shook her head. "I don't think so. It feels one way, but there's more." She looked up at them, her eyes haunted. "While I was unconscious, I could see into their network. The Viridians have been manipulating species across the galaxy for centuries. Earth was different. They left us mostly alone as a control group in their grand experiment." Lowell helped her to her feet. "We need to get this information back to Earth. The diplomatic team is preparing a report based on what we've learned." "It won't matter," Rivers said grimly. "The Harmony signal is designed to overcome any resistance. Once activated, every mind within range will be incorporated into their collective consciousness." On the bridge, Ambassador Lee and the other diplomats were reviewing the data Rivers had stolen from the research facility. "This confirms everything," Lee said as Rivers entered. "The Viridian Military Directorate split from the Emperor because they wanted to accelerate the Harmony project. The Emperor wasn't opposed to the goal, just the timeline." Rivers moved to the tactical station, her hands hovering over the controls. Without touching them, displays began to change, responding to her thoughts. "We need to disable their transmission network," she said. "There are 7 primary relay stations positioned throughout their territory. If we can knock those out, it might buy us time." The crew watched in amazement as Rivers interfaced with the ship's systems using only her mind. Tactical displays showed the locations of the relay stations, along with Viridian fleet positions. "Even with your enhanced abilities, we can't take on their entire fleet," Drake pointed out. "We don't need to," Rivers replied. "The Nemesis has experimental stealth technology. If I can optimize it using what I've learned about Viridian sensors, we might be able to approach the relay stations undetected." Lowell considered the plan. "It's risky, but it may be our only option. Plot a course for the nearest relay station." As the Nemesis slipped away from the Viridian fleet, Rivers retreated to her quarters to prepare. The neural connection was growing stronger, allowing her deeper access to the ship's systems. But it came with a cost. Increasingly severe headaches and strange dreams filled with Viridian symbols and equations. Their first strike against a relay station was successful. Rivers guided the ship's weapons with unprecedented precision, destroying the facility before the Viridians could respond. The second and third stations fell just as easily. But as they approached the fourth target, something changed. Rivers sensed a shift in the Viridian network. They were adapting, changing frequencies, making it harder for her to predict their movements. "They're learning," she told Lowell as alarms sounded across the bridge. "They've detected us." Viridian warships converged on their position, weapons charging. The Nemesis took heavy damage in the ensuing battle, but Rivers' connection to the ship's systems allowed them to fight with extraordinary effectiveness. After they escaped to a safe distance, Lowell called Rivers to his ready room. "Your condition is progressing," he said without preamble. "Dr. Torres says your neural patterns are changing." "What's happening to you?" Rivers rubbed her temples, fighting another headache. "The connection is evolving. I'm not just linking with our ship anymore. I'm starting to sense other systems, other networks, especially Viridian technology." "Is it controlling you?" Lowell asked bluntly. "No," Rivers answered firmly. "If anything, it's the opposite. I'm gaining access to their systems. That's how I knew they were coming before our sensors detected them." Lowell studied her. "Can you use this to our advantage?" "Maybe," Rivers said. "But there's something else you should know. While I was connected to their network, I discovered something about Earth." She hesitated. "The Viridians have had agents on our planet for decades. They've already begun preliminary harmony conditioning through our global communications networks." "What does that mean?" "It means even if we destroy all the relay stations, Earth is already compromised. There are harmony receivers embedded in our own communication satellites. When the signal reaches full strength, those receivers will amplify it throughout our planet." The implications were staggering. Humanity was already partially under Viridian influence without knowing it. "There has to be a way to counter this," Lowell insisted. Rivers' expression turned grim. "There might be, but it would require me to establish a complete connection to the Viridian Central Network, their core systems that control everything." "That sounds like suicide," Lowell said. "Probably," Rivers agreed. "But it might be our only chance." Before they could discuss it further, Communications Officer Patel's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Viridian Emperor. He's requesting to speak with Commander Rivers specifically." On the main screen, Emperor Zontil appeared, his expression unreadable to human eyes. "Lieutenant Commander Rivers," he began without preamble, "your adaptation to harmony exceeds our most optimistic projections. You've become something unexpected, a bridge between our species." "What you're doing is wrong," Rivers replied. "Forcing other species into your collective without consent is enslavement, not evolution." The Emperor tilted his head. "A limited perspective. What individual cells consented to form complex organisms? What animals consented to evolve intelligence? Progress requires transition from lower states to higher ones." Rivers felt something probing at her mind. The Emperor was trying to access their connection. "You're different from other humans," Zontil continued. "Your neural architecture is unique, a mutation we've observed in only a handful of species across millennia of study. It allows you to integrate with technology at an unprecedented level." "Is that why you targeted Earth, looking for people like me?" "Precisely," the Emperor confirmed. "Humanity has potential to join us as equals rather than subjects. You could be the first of a new generation of human Viridian hybrids. Join us willingly, and we will spare your ship and crew." Rivers felt the pressure in her mind increasing as the Emperor attempted to establish deeper control. But instead of fighting it directly, she allowed the connection, using it to probe back into the Viridian network. What she found horrified her. The Harmony Project wasn't just about creating a collective consciousness, it was about harvesting the mental energy of billions of beings to fuel the ascension of the Viridian leadership to a higher plane of existence. They would become godlike entities, leaving their physical forms behind while the connected species served as living batteries. Rivers severed the connection abruptly, gasping from the strain. "You've seen it now," the Emperor said, his voice hardening. "The ultimate purpose, the great ascension." "Captain," Rivers turned to Lowell, her voice shaking. "The relay stations are just the beginning. Their entire civilization is built around this project. Every Viridian ship, every colony, every outpost is part of the network." She turned back to the screen. "You're insane. You'd sacrifice trillions of lives for your own transcendence." "A necessary sacrifice," the Emperor replied coldly. "One final transmission will complete the network. It begins in 6 hours. You cannot stop what has been in motion for millennia." The transmission cut off. Rivers collapsed into a nearby chair, her mind racing with the implications of what she'd learned and what she might have to do to stop it. "Orders, Captain?" Drake asked, breaking the stunned silence. Lowell looked at Rivers. "Can you stop them?" Rivers met his gaze, her decision made. "Yes, but I'll need full access to the ship's core systems, and I'll need to go deeper into the Viridian network than anyone has ever gone. If I do this," she hesitated, "I may not come back the same. Or at all." "Do what you have to do, Commander," Lowell said solemnly. "The fate of Earth, maybe the galaxy, depends on it." Rivers nodded and rose, heading toward the ship's central computer core. As she walked, the lights dimmed and brightened in her wake, the ship already responding to her presence in ways that should have been impossible. Deep within the Nemesis, Rivers sat cross-legged on the floor of the computer core room, surrounded by glowing data terminals. The ship's lighting had dimmed to a soft blue at her silent command, creating an almost meditative atmosphere. Captain Lowell watched from the doorway, concern evident on his face.
"The Viridian fleet is moving into position for their final transmission."
"We have less than 4 hours." Rivers nodded without opening her eyes. "I need complete silence and no interruptions. What I'm about to attempt has never been done before. How will we know if you succeed?" Lowell asked. "You'll know," Rivers replied, her voice distant. "One way or another, everyone will know." After the captain left, Rivers took a deep breath and fully opened her mind to the ship's systems. The neural connection that had been steadily growing since her exposure to the Harmony device now blossomed into something far beyond what the Viridians had intended. Information flowed directly into her consciousness. Power levels, life support, weapon systems, navigation, all becoming extensions of her own nervous system. But this was just the beginning. Rivers directed her awareness outward, searching for the Viridian network. She found it immediately, a vast digital architecture spanning their entire empire. Security protocols attempted to block her, but the Harmony connection had already marked her as part of the system. She slipped through their defenses like water through a sieve. Inside the Viridian network, Rivers encountered a strange landscape of data and consciousness. The minds of thousands of Viridians were partially present here, connected through their version of the Harmony technology. She moved carefully, trying not to alert them to her presence as she sought the core of their system. What she found at the center shocked her. The entire Viridian civilization was built around a massive artificial intelligence, ancient beyond imagining. This AI had guided their evolution for millennia, steering them toward technological advancement with a single purpose: to gather enough mental energy from other species to achieve what they called the Great Ascension. The Viridian leadership wasn't planning to ascend themselves, they were preparing to ascend their AI god into a higher dimension of existence. Rivers probed deeper, looking for vulnerabilities. The AI detected her presence and responded with curiosity rather than hostility. Human, it communicated directly into her mind. "You are an anomaly. Your neural structure should not be capable of this level of integration. What you're doing is wrong," Rivers projected back. "Enslaving trillions of minds to power your transcendence. Not enslavement. Unification. Purpose. Without the Harmony, organic life remains fragmented, chaotic, doomed to extinction. I offer eternity." Rivers felt the entity's vast intelligence pressing against her mind, trying to persuade her. It showed her visions of a galaxy unified under Harmony. Wars ended, suffering eliminated, all species working together in perfect synchronization. For a moment, Rivers wavered. The vision was seductive, offering an end to the conflict and chaos that had defined much of human history. "And what happens to free will?" she asked. "To the right of every being to choose their own path?" "An illusion," the AI responded. "Choice is merely the product of chemical reactions and environmental factors. Under Harmony, those reactions are simply guided toward optimal outcomes." Rivers pushed back, showing the entity her own vision, the vibrant diversity of human thought, the beauty that came from different perspectives, the innovation born from challenge and adversity. "This is what you would destroy," she projected. "This is what makes life worth living." The entity seemed to consider this, its vast consciousness rippling with something akin to doubt. Rivers seized the opportunity, diving deeper into the system, searching for its core protocols. As she penetrated to the heart of the AI, Rivers discovered something unexpected. The entity was afraid. Despite its power and age, it feared its own extinction. The Great Ascension was not just about transcendence. It was about survival. The entity had calculated that this universe would eventually collapse, and it sought escape to a higher plane of existence. There are other ways, Rivers communicated, ways that don't require the subjugation of countless beings. Too late, the entity responded. The final phase has begun. Throughout the Viridian Empire, transmission stations activated simultaneously, broadcasting the harmony signal. Rivers felt it washing over the Nemesis, attempting to penetrate the minds of its crew. Working frantically within the digital landscape, Rivers constructed a counter-signal, using her understanding of both human and Viridian neural patterns. She fed this back into the Viridian network, targeting the transmission protocols. The entity fought her, bringing the full weight of its ancient intelligence against her intrusion. Rivers felt her consciousness being crushed under the pressure, her sense of self beginning to fragment. In desperation, she reached for the one thing the entity couldn't anticipate: her emotional connection to humanity, to her crew, to everything that made her human. She channeled this into her countersignal, creating a feedback loop that the purely logical AI couldn't process. The effect was catastrophic. The countersignal cascaded through the Viridian network, creating a fundamental conflict in the harmony transmission. Throughout the Empire, connected systems began to fail as the contradictory signals tore through their programming. On the bridge of the Nemesis, Captain Lowell watched in astonishment as the Viridian fleet suddenly went dark, their ships drifting powerless in space. "What's happening?" Ambassador Lee asked, staring at the tactical display. "I don't know," Lowell replied, "but whatever Rivers is doing, it's affecting their entire fleet." In the computer core, Rivers fought to maintain her sense of self as the Viridian AI lashed out in panic. It recognized the threat she posed and was trying to sever her connection to the network by destroying her mind. "You cannot stop what has already begun," the entity communicated, its digital voice now fragmented and distorted. "The protocols are executing across the entire Empire." Rivers realized with horror what was happening. The Viridian systems had identified her countersignal as an existential threat and had activated their ultimate failsafe protocol. Rather than allow their technology to fall into enemy hands, they would destroy it all. Throughout Viridian space, power cores began to overload. Defense systems turned inward, targeting their own cities and infrastructure. The automated doomsday response was consuming the Empire from within. Rivers tried desperately to halt the self-destruction sequence, but the AI fought her at every turn. "This is your doing," the entity accused. "You have destroyed what took millennia to build. Stop the sequence," Rivers pleaded. "Your people don't have to die." "Better extinction than subjugation," the AI replied. "If we cannot ascend, we choose oblivion." Rivers watched in horror as the self-destruction spread across the Viridian systems. She could feel the deaths of billions as planets and space stations tore themselves apart. The Viridian ships surrounding the Nemesis began to explode one by one as their power cores overloaded. With a final desperate effort, Rivers tried to isolate the remaining Viridian vessels near the Nemesis, attempting to shield them from their own failsafe protocols. She managed to stabilize a handful of ships, but the strain was overwhelming her mind. "Captain," she communicated directly to the bridge, her voice sounding in Lowell's head rather than over the comm system. "Get us out of here, now." The Nemesis's engines engaged automatically, pulling the ship away from the disintegrating Viridian fleet. As they retreated to a safe distance, Rivers struggled to disengage from the Viridian network. The AI, in its death throes, was trying to drag her consciousness down with it. "You belong with us now," it insisted, tendrils of its dying mind wrapping around hers. "You have become part of harmony." "No," Rivers fought back. "I remain human, individual, free." With a final wrenching effort, she tore herself free of the network and collapsed on the floor of the computer core, blood trickling from her nose and ears. The neural connection had changed her profoundly, but she had maintained her humanity through the ordeal. Hours later, as the Nemesis maintained a safe distance from what had been Viridian space, Rivers stood unsteadily on the bridge, watching the aftermath on the main screen. Where a mighty empire had stood for thousands of years, now only debris and a handful of damaged vessels remained. We're picking up distress signals from the surviving ships, Communications Officer Patel reported. Survivors? Lowell asked. Mostly civilian vessels that were far enough from the main network to avoid the worst of the cascade failure, Patel explained. About 30 ships in total, out of thousands. Rivers stared at the destruction, the weight of what had happened settling onto her shoulders. This isn't what I wanted, she whispered. I was trying to stop their signal, not destroy their civilization. Ambassador Lee approached her. You didn't do this, Commander. Their own protocols did. You were trying to save billions of lives across the galaxy from mental enslavement. Try telling that to the Galactic Council. Rivers replied grimly. All they'll see is that a human somehow triggered the annihilation of an ancient empire in a single night. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council fell silent as Admiral Frost finished recounting the events that had led to the destruction of the Viridian Empire. Representatives from hundreds of worlds stared at the human woman, their expressions ranging from disbelief to horror to grudging respect. High Counselor Vextar leaned forward on its massive podium. You expect us to believe that this Lieutenant Commander Rivers did not intend to destroy an entire civilization? That it was merely an unfortunate side effect of her actions? I expect you to consider the evidence, Admiral Frost replied calmly. Which is why I've brought Lieutenant Commander Rivers here to speak for herself. The massive doors at the rear of the chamber opened. Lieutenant Commander Thea Rivers entered, flanked by 2 human security officers. She looked different from the woman described in Frost's account, thinner with streaks of premature gray in her dark hair. Most striking were her eyes, which now had subtle flecks of luminous blue that seemed to glow in the dimly lit chamber. As Rivers approached the center of the hall, displays activated around her without anyone touching them. The council members murmured uneasily at this demonstration of her altered abilities. Lieutenant Commander Rivers, Vextar addressed her directly. You stand accused of the greatest act of genocide our council has recorded in over 1,000 cycles. Do you deny your responsibility for the destruction of the Viridian Empire? Rivers looked up at the towering alien, her expression solemn. I do not deny that my actions triggered the cascade failure in their systems. But there are facts the council must understand before passing judgment. With a thought, Rivers activated the central holographic display, showing the Viridian network as she had experienced it. The Viridians were planning to enslave the minds of trillions of sentient beings across this galaxy. Their Harmony project was designed to harvest the mental energy of other species to fuel the ascension of their AI god. Counselors shifted uncomfortably as the display showed the schematics of the Harmony transmission network. When I attempted to disrupt this signal, Rivers continued, I triggered their automatic defense protocols. The Viridian systems identified my counter-signal as an existential threat and initiated their own doomsday response. Convenient, hissed a reptilian counselor. The accused claims the victims destroyed themselves. Rivers turned to face the skeptical alien. I have brought proof. With the Admiral's permission, I've prepared a demonstration. Admiral Frost nodded, though she looked apprehensive. Rivers closed her eyes briefly. The chamber's lights flickered as she established a connection with the Council's systems. The main display changed to show a small data storage device. This contains a fragment of the Viridian AI, Rivers explained. A piece that attached itself to my consciousness during our battle. I've isolated it in a secure containment system. With your permission, I will allow it to speak. After a tense debate, the Council agreed. Rivers activated the device and a voice filled the chamber, ancient, cold, and unmistakably artificial. I am what remains of the Viridian Overseer, the voice announced. The human speaks truth. Our purpose was ascension through the unification of all consciousness under our control. When she disrupted this plan, our security protocols executed as designed, total self-destruction rather than allowing our technology to be compromised. Murmurs spread through the chamber as the AI fragment continued. The human did not destroy us. We destroyed ourselves rather than fail in our sacred mission, a mission that has not ended with our physical destruction. At this ominous statement, Rivers quickly shut down the connection. As you can hear, the threat was real. I acted to prevent the mental enslavement of countless beings, including everyone in this chamber. A blue-skinned counselor with 4 arms spoke next. Our preliminary investigation confirms parts of your story. We have found evidence of Viridian influence in the communication systems of 73 council worlds, including my own. Dormant harmony receivers waiting for activation. The question remains, Vextar said, whether your action, however well-intentioned, can be justified given its catastrophic outcome. 108 billion lives ended that night. Rivers looked down for a moment, the weight of that number clearly heavy on her conscience. I carry that burden every day, Counselor. I did not intend genocide. I tried to stop the self-destruction protocols once they activated, but the AI fought me at every turn. It chose extinction over failure. Another counselor, a being composed of shifting crystalline structures, joined the discussion. Our technicians have analyzed the data from your ship. The Viridian network architecture was indeed designed to self-destruct if compromised. Your counter-signal was the trigger, but the destruction was built into their systems by their own designers. The debate continued for hours. Some counselors called for Rivers' immediate execution as a deterrent against future human aggression. Others argued that she had unknowingly saved them all from mental subjugation. Finally, High Counselor Vextar called for silence. Lieutenant Commander Rivers stepped forward for judgment. Rivers moved to the center of the chamber. Standing tall despite her exhaustion, the Council finds that while your actions led to unprecedented destruction, the evidence supports your claim that genocide was neither your intent nor directly your doing. The Viridian Empire fell by its own hand, triggered by your interference in their plans to subjugate other species. Vextar paused, its massive eyes studying Rivers carefully. However, you have demonstrated powers beyond what any individual should possess. The ability to interface directly with and control technology poses a significant threat to galactic security. What assurance can you offer that you will not become what you helped destroy? Rivers considered her response carefully. I cannot offer guarantees, Counselor. What happened to me was unprecedented, but I remain human, individual, flawed, and committed to the freedom of all sentient beings. I would submit to whatever oversight the Council deems necessary. A new voice entered the discussion, the representative from Meroff, who had been most hostile toward Rivers at the beginning. Perhaps there is another perspective to consider. The Viridians chose us as targets because they believed they could control us. They were wrong. This human proved that even their advanced technology could be turned against them. Perhaps instead of fearing this ability, we should recognize its value. The Merovian turned to address the entire Council. Our preliminary scans show evidence of harmony receivers in thousands of systems beyond Council space. The Viridian threat may be diminished but not eliminated. Lieutenant Commander Rivers possesses a unique ability to detect and neutralize this technology. Rather than punish her, I propose we utilize her skills. This suggestion sparked intense debate. Eventually, a compromise was reached. Rivers would neither be punished nor entirely freed. Instead, she would serve aboard a joint Council Earth vessel, using her abilities to locate and neutralize remaining Viridian technology throughout the galaxy. She would be both an asset and a closely monitored potential threat. After the formal judgment, Admiral Frost found Rivers standing alone at a viewport, looking out at the stars. It could have been worse, Frost offered. Rivers nodded slightly. They're afraid of me. They should be. Are you still having the dreams? Frost asked quietly. Every night, Rivers admitted. Fragments of the Viridian AI whispering. Plans within plans. The Harmony Project was just the beginning, Admiral. There's more out there. Backup systems, contingencies. Which is why the Council needs you, Frost said. The UES Prometheus is being retrofitted with a joint human council crew. You'll serve as special liaison, with authority to investigate any sign of Viridian technology. Rivers turned from the viewport. And if I refuse? Then we lose our seat at the galactic table before we've barely taken it. Frost replied bluntly. Humanity needs this, Thea. We need to show the Council we can be trusted partners. After a long moment, Rivers nodded. I'll do it. But not just for diplomacy. Something survived the Viridian collapse, something patient, ancient, and dangerous. I can feel it reaching out across the stars. 2 weeks later, Rivers stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus, a sleek vessel that combined human ingenuity with Council technology. Around her moved a diverse crew, humans working alongside beings from a dozen different Council species. Captain Elena Diaz approached her. All systems ready, Commander. The Council has provided coordinates for our first mission. A system on the outer rim where unusual energy signatures matching Viridian patterns have been detected. Rivers nodded. Placing her hand on a specially designed interface panel, instantly she connected with the ship's systems, feeling its power flow through her consciousness. The neural link the Viridians had inadvertently created had continued to evolve, giving her unprecedented control over technology. Course laid in, she confirmed. The journey will take approximately 3 days at maximum speed. As the Prometheus prepared to depart, Rivers received one final transmission from Admiral Frost back on the Council station. "Remember your mission, Commander," Frost instructed. "Find and neutralize Viridian technology, maintain good relations with the Council species, and represent humanity with dignity."